It's 8 o'clock.
Good morning. This is Northern Light for Thursday, November 9th. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe.
Our healthcare series continues. Today, we look at what makes the Hudson Headwaters Health Network a sustainable provider of care in the rural Adirondack North Country.
If we don't have a presence there, then those patients either aren't going to get care, which we all know sometimes happens, or they're going to end up in an urgent care or emergency department.
Voters in the state Supreme Court district that covers much of the North Country elected a new justice this week. Also, the only warming center in Watertown is open for the winter.
Clients are able to come in, get a good night's sleep, get a shower, do some laundry. When we started last year, we started with only 2 people most nights for a couple of weeks, and last night we had 4.
For years, people have been telling true 5-minute stories live on stages all over the North Country at the Howell Story Slam. Today, we'll listen to the story that won the slam in Tupper Lake this week about an encounter with a hitchhiker.
You know how with some stories, the story takes on more meaning than the events themselves? This is one of those stories.
All of that and more is coming up on Northern Light. Stick with us.
Broadcast of Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio is supported by AdirondackExplorer.com and AdirondackAlmanac.com, presenting daily updated news on public policy, environmental issues, and local communities in the Adirondack Park.
This is Northern Light. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe. Many North Country hospitals have affiliated with larger networks outside the area. This regionalization of healthcare allows local hospitals to provide specialists and technology that isn't always possible in our rural area.
One healthcare provider is taking a different approach. Hudson Headwaters is a network of small rural clinics that offers minor care to prevent major health issues, to keep people out of hospitals altogether. For the next chapter in our healthcare series, Emily Russell reports.
If you live in the North Country, you could be at least an hour's drive from the closest hospital. There are only a handful of hospitals in the entire Adirondack Park. Jonathan Maskin lives in Indian Lake, a really small town deep in the Adirondacks. He says that lack of emergency care in the park is really scary.
It's Russian roulette, to be honest with you. You know, if you're really in need of something urgently, you're in trouble.
Maskin is in his late 60s. He drives an hour and 40 minutes to see a specialist at the hospital in Albany. But for basic checkups, Maskin says he's lucky. There's a health center right in Indian Lake. It's run by Hudson Headwaters Health Network.
Where Hudson Headwaters comes in to a point is provides good primary care, which is preventative healthcare services, which is really, really important.
Hudson Headwaters is not a hospital system. It's a network of small clinics in 7 North Country counties. The aim is to provide primary care in lower-income places that are also considered medically underserved. Actually, Hudson Headwaters is required to do that. That's because it's what's known as a federally qualified health center, or FQHC.
It's a federal designation that you have to meet some pretty specific requirements around geography, needs assessments.
That's Kevin Gallagher. He's a family doc for Hudson Headwaters in Warrensburg and Glens Falls. One key requirement of an FQHC is that they always have to accept new patients, regardless of insurance.
We're essentially a primary care safety net provider. We're supposed to be available to anyone who needs care and be able to provide that fairly and equitably in any community.
It's able to do that with significant help from the federal government. At an FQHC like Hudson Headwaters, the government ensures a set reimbursement rate, regardless of what an insurance company offers. So if a visit costs $150 and an insurance company only pays $80, the government makes up for the difference. The whole idea behind Hudson Headwaters began in the mid-1970s. A few docs, including its founder, John Ruggie, wanted to provide care in communities where there was no other option. But by the late 70s, it was clear that these rural independent health centers were losing money fast. Here's Ruggie in a video from Hudson Headwaters' website.
And losses that were becoming unsustainable and the hospital reimbursement had been constrained during this time. So I had a letter in my drawer indicating we were closing the Chester Health Center.
It was at that point, Ruggie says, that they applied to become a federally qualified health center. Hudson Headwaters started in Chestertown in Warren County. Today, there are 22 health centers around the region, from up in Champlain over to Tupper Lake and down to Whitehall. And the network is growing.
For now. So this is all the new space. So we added 7 additional rooms here. So and they're good-sized rooms.
Melissa Gooley is giving a tour around the Hudson Headwaters Health Center in Saranac Lake. The facility opened in 2020, and this fall, it's doubled in size. Again, the idea is to provide primary care that's preventative. And Gooley says this facility is set up to do a lot.
You have a little lesion that you want removed to see if, it's cancerous or you're worried. We have providers that do that here. We do pap smears here. We do joint injections, a lot of those things.
Being a federally qualified health center opens Hudson Headwaters up to a lot of federal grants. And its growth over the years has allowed the network to hire a team focused largely on that whole aspect of the business. That sets it apart from smaller, private, independent doctors' offices around the region. But it doesn't solve the staffing crisis that plagues rural places like the North Country. State Assemblyman Billy Jones, who represents Franklin, Clinton, and parts of Essex County, was on the recent tour in Saranac Lake.
I think the number one issue when it comes to healthcare here in the area, from what I have been hearing in the last 3, 4, probably even longer than that, 6, 7, 8 years, is how do we get providers here and how do we retain those providers?
This is another aspect where the federal designation is essential for Hudson Headwaters. Providers who work at an FQHC qualify to have their student loans repaid over time. The government also offers malpractice insurance to all of its providers. While that doesn't solve all of its staffing problems, Dr. Patricia Monroe says the stability of Hudson Headwaters gives the network a leg up.
It's pretty obvious that probably Hudson Headwaters is a sustainable practice. So that allows you to recruit more. And if you recruit them, well, then obviously you feel more comfortable then and you can recruit more. So it feeds on itself.
Meanwhile, Hudson Headwaters is trying to reach even more remote places by sending a mobile clinic. The network's chief operating officer, Patty Hammond, says patients in the Washington County town of Salem had been asking for more care there.
So we take the mobile van, and those patients get care Mondays and Tuesdays. And then we established ourselves, and now we're looking at the possibility of building a healthcare center in Salem.
In these small rural towns, Hudson Headwaters has filled a gap. Local health centers like the one in Indian Lake offer not only primary care, but at times they can help in emergencies. Town Supervisor Brian Wells says he had plenty of those when he worked as a contractor.
I was there constantly getting stitched up. I shot a nail through my finger. I took a board to the forehead and split my own. So, for emergency care, they do what they can.
Which is more than what most other towns in the Adirondacks have access to. Even for towns that do have local doctors' offices, Wells believes those offices are more vulnerable than the ones that are part of the Hudson Headwaters network.
When these people retire out of the system, where are you going to find somebody to come take a small practice? You might, but, with Hudson Headwaters, if we lose a PA, they'll send somebody else up.
A fact that Wells says is really reassuring, both as a patient and a town official. Hudson Headwaters has plans to open its next health center in Malone this winter and another in Lake Placid next year. Emily Russell, North Country Public Radio, Saranac Lake.
This story is part of our series Imperfect Solutions on Healthcare in the North Country. You can find all the stories on our website, ncpr.org/healthcare.
You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. It's 10 minutes past 8. Good morning. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. Coming up, a hitchhiker pickup gone awry. That story in just a few minutes right here on Northern Light.
Music by The Curries out of Potsdam. Northern Light is supported by Cronin's Golf Resort, a regional destination for golf, dining, and lodging in the southern Adirondacks. Details at croninsgolfresort.com. There's a mixed wintry precipitation in the forecast today and tonight, with highs near 40 this afternoon. Right now, showers, 33 degrees in Canton.
Voters in the state Supreme Court district that covers much of the North Country elected a new justice this week. Kara Chapman has more.
The 4th Judicial District is the largest in the state geographically. It covers the North Country counties of Clinton, Essex, Franklin, Hamilton, St. Lawrence, Warren, and Washington, as well as Fulton, Montgomery, Saratoga, and Schenectady counties. Paul Davenport won in all of them, according to the available unofficial tallies. With the vast majority of districts reporting Wednesday, he led Carl Filatico by more than 20,000 votes. Davenport ran on the Republican and Conservative Party lines, while Filatico ran as a Democrat. Davenport has served as Glenville Town Court Justice since 2008 and as an acting judge for Schenectady City Court since 2011. He also has more than 30 years of experience as a trial lawyer. Davenport was elected to a 14-year term on the Supreme Court. According to the Plattsburgh Press-Republican, he'll replace Michael Cuevas, who's retiring due to the state's age limit. Despite its name, the Supreme Court is not the highest court in New York State. That's the State Court of Appeals. The Supreme Court is the trial court with the broadest jurisdiction. It can hear almost all types of cases, except claims brought against the state. But it mainly takes cases outside the jurisdiction of other trial courts. The Supreme Court also must be involved in proceedings to end a marriage. Kara Chapman, North Country Public Radio.
The state recently awarded 2 industrial development agencies in the North Country funds to help develop their business parks. The Herkimer County IDA will receive almost $4.5 million for infrastructure upgrades at Schuyler Business Park. Those include the installation of a 500,000-gallon water storage tank and improvements to the existing entrance. The counties of Warren and Washington IDA will get more than $4.5 million for the Fort Edward Canal-Side Energy Park project. The funds will help with the build-out of wastewater infrastructure and improvements to drinking water infrastructure at the site. The money comes from the Focused Attraction of Shovel-Ready Tracks New York Grant Program, also known as FAST NY. It's designed to prepare and develop sites across the state. The goal is to help attract large employers and high-tech manufacturing companies.
Plattsburgh International Airport's newest airline has added a second destination. Breeze Airways will offer seasonal flights from Plattsburgh to Tampa starting in early February. One-way fares start at $89 if purchased by November 14th. Clinton County, which owns the airport, announced its partnership with Breeze Airways in September. The airline's direct flights to Orlando are scheduled to begin later this month. Allegiant Air currently offers flights from Plattsburgh to multiple destinations in Florida. Contour Airlines offers flights to Philadelphia.
The only warming center in Watertown opened for the winter last week as nighttime temperatures start to drop below freezing. It's one of the only places in Jefferson County where those without a place to stay can spend the night. Lucy Grindon reports.
The warming center in Watertown has 20 cots placed together in a gym. Its first night of the season was last Wednesday, and demand was already higher than it was at this time last year.
When we started last year, we started with only 2 people most nights for a couple of weeks, and last night we had 4.
That's Elizabeth Nickel. She's one of the 2 captains of the local Salvation Army, which runs the warming center in its building on State Street. The city doesn't have a permanent homeless shelter. Last winter, unhoused people were staying underneath Butler Pavilion until the city moved them into a temporary shelter in a former garage. But that shelter closed in January. Jefferson County has also considered setting up a pallet shelter, a collection of small temporary dwellings, which would offer more privacy. But that idea hasn't yet come to fruition. Right now, Nichols says the warming center is the only place in town where unhoused people can come to spend the night indoors.
Clients are able to come in, get a good night's sleep, get a shower, do some laundry. We do have laundry facilities available. So we're able to provide all three of those things all in one.
The warming center is only open nightly from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. That's what makes it a warming center as opposed to a shelter. And whereas shelters by law have to exclude people with violent criminal records, Nichols says warming centers can accept anyone, no questions asked.
There's just not a lot of options in our community for places for people to go to stay the night. So being low barrier, as long as you're going to come in and sleep and not cause problems, you got a place to go every night. You don't have to worry about what you've done or where you've been.
Nichols says if families with kids come to the warming center, the county will put them up in a local motel. The warming center will remain open every night through the end of April. Lucy Grindon, North Country Public Radio.
Major construction on a new bridge along an important state highway in Hamilton County is complete. The original bridge that carried State Route 28N over Fishing Brook was irreparably damaged by devastating flooding in July. State Route 28N, which connects Long Lake and Newcomb, was closed for 3 weeks in the aftermath. A temporary steel panel bridge was installed to restore travel. According to Governor Hochul's office, the new permanent bridge is 30 feet longer than the previous span. It also has a wider opening that will allow better water flow and improved flood resilience. Finishing work will take place over the next few weeks and may require periodic lane closures.
Veterans Day is New York State's last free fishing day this year. On Saturday, all residents and non-residents ages 16 and older can fish without a freshwater fishing license or recreational marine fishing registration. All other regulations remain in effect. According to the State Department of Environmental Conservation, kids younger than 16 can always fish for free. Active duty military members who meet certain criteria and some disabled veterans are eligible for free or reduced fee fishing licenses.
You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. Coming up in just a minute, when a lie gets out of hand. We'll hear a story about that coming up in just a couple of minutes. Then stick around after the show for Bird Note. We'll meet a superbly camouflaged bird with a melodious, mournful song. That's just ahead at 8:42. But first, Todd has a look at the weather for us.
Light layer of heavy wet snow, slush, some freezing rain this morning across our region. There were a few schools with delayed start times because of slippery roads. The Weather Service says that mixed precipitation will likely continue throughout the day, on and off, and into this evening, but a 50-50 chance of a wintry mix again on Friday. Highs this afternoon ranging from the upper 30s to mid-40s. Tonight, lows in the 30s, and then highs tomorrow in the 40s. Right now in Canton, we've got scattered showers, 33 degrees.
For years, people have been telling true 5-minute stories live on stages all over the North Country at the Howell Story Slam. They're super popular with packed crowds. Every table was packed this week at Racket River Brewing in Tupper Lake, and we wanted to share the story that won the night. Here's station manager Mitch Tyke introducing our storyteller.
Next to speak at this edition of the Howl, the last edition of the Howl before the Grand Slam, please give a warm welcome to Dakin Henderson.
Hi, everybody. I want to tell you a story about picking up a hitchhiker. I was 17 on a long drive through Pennsylvania, and I was getting back onto the highway after stopping for gas. And there's this guy with his thumb out. And I pull over, and he leans into the window, and he says, "Hey, man, I just want to let you know that I got out of prison a couple of weeks ago. And I just want to make sure that you're okay with that before I get in the car. My 17-year-old self was like, sure, man, that's cool. Come on in. So he gets in, get back on the highway, driving along, making small talk. And all I can think about is, what did he do? So finally, I'm like, so how long were you in prison for? And he's like, 2 years. I'm like, 2 years, huh? And I just blurt out the question, so what were you in for? And he goes, well, I got in a fight at a bar, and I knocked a guy out. I'm like, you knocked a guy out. What does that mean? Was he okay? And he goes, well, I wanted to make sure he had something to remember me by. And then he said, and so I cut out all of his teeth with my pocket knife. I cut out all of his teeth with my pocket knife. Can you imagine? Ugh. I was so freaked out by that, I got off at the next exit and told him to please get out of the car. And he did. You know how with some stories, the story takes on more meaning than the events themselves? This is one of those stories. The first time I told this story, I had just taken a job as a sailing instructor at a yacht club on Cape Cod, which tells you a little something about my background. And we were at this instructor orientation, summer kickoff barbecue thing. And I'm sitting at a big table with all of these beautiful strangers who are going to be my coworkers for the summer. And the topic of hitchhikers comes up. And I start telling the story. And when I get to the punchline, and then I cut out all of his teeth with my pocket knife, the room just exploded. Like people were grabbing their mouths and getting up out of their chairs. I have never told a story that went over that well. So the summer begins, and we're out there on the water with our shirts off and our sunglasses on, and I'm making friends. And the hitchhiker story takes on a life of its own. I am asked to tell that story so many times at every backyard barbecue, every beach bonfire. People start telling the story of me telling the story to each other. I would meet total strangers who would come up to me and be like, you're Dakin with the hitchhiker story. And I'd be like, yeah, that's me. I'm Dakin with the hitchhiker story. But here's the problem. What if I told you right now that that story is a lie? It never happened to me. I made it up. No, I didn't. I didn't make it up. I stole it. I took it from someone else for my own. You want to know the truth behind the hitchhiker story? The truth is, I was at a fishing shop in the Poconos, and I overheard somebody telling this story to the person at the counter. I returned to the same job every summer for several years. The other instructors became my very good friends. It was really a wonderful group of people that I found myself in. And the hitchhiker story just wouldn't go away. To make a long story short, I started to feel weird about this. It took a little too long for me to figure that out. And eventually I told myself the next time somebody asked me to tell this story, I'm going to come clean. And when the time came, that's what I did. I told the truth to basically the same group of people that were in the room that first time. I wish I could go into the moment. It was extremely awkward. My friends saw me differently after that, but they were still my friends. And I realized that it wasn't that they had fallen for the hitchhiker story, it was that I had fallen for them. Thank you.
That was Dakin Henderson. He won the Howell Story Slam this week, so he is moving on to the Howell Grand Slam with the winners from all the other Howells from throughout the North Country. That's coming in January. Stay tuned. We'll have more details in the coming weeks, and find stories just like this one on the first season of the Howell podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts and at ncpr.org/Howell. You can binge listen those ahead of season 2 of the show, which will launch in January.
It's 25 minutes past 8. You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. And want to remind you that there are a couple of concerts coming up this weekend at Tawny in Canton, all part of the Fiddling Bear concert series. Fiddler Gretchen Kohler, and Barb Heller, host of String Fever here on NCPR, will be performing Friday night, 7 o'clock at Tawny in downtown Canton. And then Adirondack musician Tyler DeZago will perform Saturday night at 7 o'clock, same venue, Tawny in downtown Canton. And here is a preview. This is Gretchen and Barb with a tune called June in the North Country. Gretchen Kohler on fiddle, Barb Heller on guitar, Dave Ruck there on octo mandolin. Tune called June in the North Country, written in honor of June peoples. And you can hear Gretchen and Barb. They'll be at the Tawny Center in Canton tomorrow night, Friday night, 7 o'clock. And then on Saturday night, join Tyler DeZago at Tawny for more music, part of the Fiddling Bear concert series at Tawny in Canton, 7 o'clock. For more information, check the website, tawny.org.
That is it for the show for the day. Morning Edition continues in just a couple of minutes. Then join us this afternoon for Here and Now. We'll hear some of the key moments from Wednesday night's Republican presidential candidates debate. That's coming up this afternoon between 1 and 3 o'clock right here on North Country Public Radio. I'm Monica Sandreski.
I'm Todd Moe. Be well.